There are two main modes of interpreting: consecutive and simultaneous interpreting. They will be presented in detail now. Consecutive interpreting is known in Vietnamese as dịch đuổi. In a consecutive interpreting situation, an interpreter gives a rendering of lengthy passages of speech after the party has finished speaking. He or she will give a structured and accurate rendering of the meaning of the statement with no major distortion of meaning and no changes to the logical order of the statement or serious omissions of detail. Consecutive interpreting may take one of the two forms, unilateral or bilateral. Dịch một chiều hoặc là dịch hai chiều. In unilateral interpreting, you may interpret sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, or you interpret the whole speech, which may last 5, 10, 20 minutes, up to half an hour or 1 hour. Bilateral interpreting is the common form of liaison interpreting, which is known as dịch tháp tùng. Consecutive interpreting is often used when the interpreter needs to escort a non-English speaking group to a large gathering of English speakers, like a trade fair or exposition, or in conferences where smaller working parties meet in rooms which lack telephonic interpreting facilities. Dịch đuổi thường được sử dụng khi mà người dịch cần phải hộ tống một nhóm người không biết tiếng Anh khi tới nơi mà hầu hết mọi người nói tiếng Anh. Ví dụ như là trong một buổi triển lãm hoặc là dịch trong một hội thảo cho những nhóm nhỏ, những cái đoàn người nhỏ trong trường hợp mà không có thiết bị dịch cabin, không có các cái phiên dịch cabin. So in this case, interpreters often sit alongside the speakers and interpret at intervals. Now, let's investigate the necessary qualities of a consecutive interpreter. Well, among many qualities required of a consecutive interpreter, here are the most important ones. Firstly, an interpreter must have a proficiency in 2 languages and 2 cultures to understand exactly what is being said, to get the correct idea and meaning. Secondly, the quickness of speech and mind is vital. As the input are uttered in fast speech and without a quick mind, it's difficult to even impossible to follow the native speakers. A good memory is also necessary in order to render the ideas accurately and completely. Besides, you need to get familiar to the terms and situations, as specific terms take up a large part of the content of what you are interpreting, especially in conferences or meetings or unfamiliar situations, and terms do cost you challenges. Remaining impartial and not taking sides is one key point of what ethics of an interpreter. Importantly, a good interpreter should have note-taking skills of a very high order, which will be discussed further in the next part. And as interpreting is a very stressful job, you should be prepared to work under stressful conditions with almost no help once on duty. In addition to these, an interpreter also needs a power of concentration, a sense of responsibility, and a high level of education and culture, as they help you improve work performance. Simultaneous interpreting is known in Vietnamese as dịch song song or dịch cabin. Its name reveals how the information is rendered, but there is actually more to what we often think of simultaneous interpreting. Simultaneous interpreters do not wait for a speaker to finish a segment and pause before beginning to interpret, but they follow the speaker and interpret what the speaker is saying. In other words, the interpreter and the speaker speak almost at the same time, with interpreter being several seconds after the speaker. Advantages of simultaneous interpreting are that it saves a great deal of time and is less disruptive than other forms of interpreting. It is commonly practiced at international conferences and forums. However, it is expensive to pay for electronic equipment and simultaneous interpreters. In terms of the forms, simultaneous interpreting may take the form of side translation, where a written source text is read aloud as if written in the target language text. Whispered interpretation, which is known as ziktimtam, like at a meeting without interpreting equipment or in the torch, and electronic hookup, zikabin, for example, at a conference with microphones and headsets and booths for the interpreters. Before we continue with the next point of lesson, let's have a quick reflection by answering some questions. Could you name some situations where liaison interpreters are needed? Yes, there are many. For example, between doctors and patients, solicitors and clients, or foreign investors and Vietnamese partners, or bank managers and clients. So, what are main difficulties facing interpreters? Well, the job of an interpreter is not simple. They have to keep up with the time, they work under pressure, and they have to think between two different languages. They are the biggest challenges. So, are there any solutions to help interpreters overcome the difficulties? Not as much though. Interpreters should try to make the best preparation before a task. They can look for support from experts and the clients. Professional training courses also provide them with the necessary skills for the job. In the next part, we'll be talking about the interpreting process and what happens during the process.